For decades, asphalt has been a critical component in the construction of the world's infrastructure. In fact, roughly 94% of paved roads in the United States are made from asphalt. This incredibly versatile material is also used for highways, airport runways, parking lots, and more. However, there are many important safety precautions that should be followed when working around an asphalt plant. A tremendous amount of energy, electrical, thermal, and others, is needed to maintain an asphalt plant, which poses certain risks to all employees. With proper training, major risks associated with plant operations can be properly managed to provide the safest possible work environment. Only employees with knowledge of the system, the electrical controls, and warning devices are permitted to start equipment in the plants. All employees must also conduct pre-operational inspections using the prepared checklist. It is important to report any safety issues. Plant safety audits. The asphalt plant supervisor, safety manager, and/or safety committee should conduct regular safety audits. In a safety audit, make sure of the following. Guards, i.e. tail pulleys, return rollers, and shafts, are properly guarded. Electrical cables are not frayed or cracked. The plant is kept clean, i.e. no tripping hazards. Proper warning labels and signage are intact and visible. Fire extinguishers are inspected and properly tagged. All warning alarm systems are functional. Employees are wearing proper personal protective equipment, or PPE. Confined spaces are identified and properly labeled. Daily plant inspection forms are up to date. Finally, be sure to conduct general safety observations to ensure all equipment is operating correctly. Corrective action must be taken on any piece of equipment that is not compliant with safety standards. The asphalt plant. When starting the plant, an alarm will sound and should not be stopped until the plant operator makes eye contact with all employees working in the area. Before entering the asphalt plant, all visitors and employees must check in with the plant operator. If the operator leaves the control house during a stoppage, he or she must lock out the main control and access to the control house. Under no circumstances should the operator leave the control house while the plant or a motor is running. Personal protective equipment, or PPE. Standard personal protective equipment, or PPE, including hard hats and approved safety glasses, safety jacket, safety vest or high-vis garments, and steel-toe shoes or boots, must be worn at all times in the asphalt plant. Working with liquid asphalt, however, requires additional PPE. Liquid asphalt is a glue that is used to bond the aggregates together. This process requires heating the asphalt to very high temperatures. To avoid severe burns and prevent injury when handling liquid asphalt, you must also wear the following: appropriate eye protection and a face shield, cotton or wool clothing in good condition, i.e. no holes, shirts buttoned to the top, and cuffs buttoned to the wrist. No nylon. Heavy heat-resistant rubber gloves, and cover all exposed skin. Long sleeves that extend over the top of the gloves to prevent hot asphalt from filling inside the gloves. Steel-toe boots with tops at least 6 inches high. Remember to tie boots tightly to prevent asphalt from leaking through the tongue. Do not tuck pants into boots. Remember, PPE is intended for your protection. Do not take shortcuts. Unloading tanker trucks. Without following proper PPE and other procedures, unloading an asphalt tanker can be a high-risk process in which employees could be exposed to hot liquid asphalt. Liquid asphalt burns can occur while removing a hose from the tanker. Proper precautions must be taken when connecting or removing the hose from the tanker. Prior to disconnecting the hose, personnel should double-check that the valve is off and then stand to the side while removing the hose as a precaution if the valve were to get stuck and oil were to splash out. Burns. Another potential safety hazard on an asphalt plant are asphalt burns. In the event of a liquid asphalt burn, your safety officer on site should be consulted immediately. Consult medical personnel as soon as possible. The following procedure could be helpful. Cool the asphalt immediately with water colder than body temperature. Hot asphalt will continue to burn if not cooled as soon as possible. Never apply ice directly to the affected area. Do not remove the asphalt from the skin. Doing so could remove skin and cause more problems. Place the affected area under running water for at least 20 minutes or until the asphalt reaches room temperature. Not all medical personnel are familiar with hot asphalt burns. Let them know they should not try to remove the asphalt or apply ice to the affected area. Remember to report all incidents and injuries to the site manager as soon as possible. Confined spaces. Asphalt plants have many confined spaces, all of which require a permit for entry. A confined space is defined as an enclosure with limited or restricted entry or exit. These spaces were not designed for human occupancy, but are big enough to enter and work in. Confined spaces must be properly marked throughout an asphalt plant. If you are unsure of whether a confined space exists, contact your supervisor. Examples of confined spaces include asphalt silos, bag houses, additive bins or lime silos, feed hoppers, drums, and liquid asphalt tanks. These spaces usually have one of the following hazards: an engulfment or entrapment hazard, such as a cold feed bin, atmospheric hazards, which can be asphyxiating, toxic, flammable, or explosive, configuration hazards in which the size or shape of the space could trap an employee or make escape or rescue difficult. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or OSHA, defines a confined space entry as any time part of an employee's body passes through the entryway of a confined space. This includes simply putting your hand through an opening. Please note, employees should never enter a confined space alone. There should always be an attendant present. Before entering any confined space, there are multiple things that must be done. First, a supervisor must complete a permit listing all potential hazards in the space and the precautions being taken to eliminate or mitigate these hazards, so as to protect the employee entering the space. Second, both the employee entering the space and the attendant, who must remain outside the space, must have received additional training as outlined by the safety department. Third, the entrant must be briefed on the hazards faced during entry, as well as the signs, symptoms, and severity of overexposure to potentially hazardous materials. Fourth, all entrants must wear a harness attached to a lifeline and retrieval system. Fifth, the air must be tested for toxic substances, oxygen levels, flammable gases, and vapors. And finally, there must be an emergency plan in place in case something goes wrong. There are several steps to testing the air of any confined space. A meter should be used to check for oxygen, hydrogen sulfide, carbon monoxide, and LELs such as hydrocarbons and methane. The attendant must continually test and retest the air quality of the confined space from entry to exit. Aeration should be provided for added ventilation. When checking atmospheric conditions, it is important to know that oxygen concentration of air is 21%. When the oxygen level rises to 23.5% or higher, the oxygen-enriched environment presents a fire hazard. When the oxygen level falls below 19.5%, the oxygen deficiency puts entrants at risk for unconsciousness or even death. Statistics show that 60% of confined space fatalities are would-be rescuers. In the event that an entrant needs to evacuate but cannot escape under his or her own power, the attendant should never enter the space. Instead, he or she must use the tripod, hoist, and lifeline to remove the entrant. Only properly trained and equipped emergency personnel may enter confined spaces for rescue and recovery. Another health risk when working in a bag house is exposure to silica. Prolonged exposure to respirable silica that is less than 10 microns can lead to certain respiratory health risks. Dust level measurements conducted in a selected bag house indicated that ambient levels have the potential to exceed OSHA permissible exposure levels. In order to manage this safety hazard, employees must wear a respirator. All employees who use the respirator must be medically tested to ensure they are healthy enough to wear a respirator. The respirator should be fit tested to the individual user, and the employee should read and be familiar with the respiratory protection program at his or her site. It is important to remember that air purifying respirators do not supply oxygen. They simply filter the air you breathe. Before putting on a respirator, ensure it is the proper one for the protection needed. Check the neck strap and headband for breaks or tears, and make sure all straps can be adjusted properly. OSHA 1910.146 lists all the requirements for safely entering a confined space. Your team should fully understand these requirements and be in compliance before entering any confined space. Lockout, tagout, tryout. The lockout, tagout, tryout procedure is used in the following situations. If an employee needs to remove or bypass a safety device, such as a guard, or if an employee needs to put part of his or her body into an area or piece of equipment where work is performed or danger exists. Be aware that some electrical boxes have higher voltage and require arc flash protection. Arc flash protection is a federal law. To understand these regulations, see OSHA 1910.269. To initiate the process, all employees must follow these steps. First, warn all affected employees. Second, turn off the machine or equipment. Finally, isolate the energy source. Employees should lock out all switches and/or energy controls with their assigned lock and key. An employee's lockout lock can have a key or a combination, but it cannot be used for anything except the lockout procedure. Do not forget to tag the lockout device so you can be identified as the employee locking out the device. Remember to put the key in your pocket so you are the only one who can unlock the lock. Company best practice protocols require employees to lock out the components before and after the piece of equipment that is being worked on, in order to prevent injury from movement of surrounding machinery. Before working with any equipment or machinery, you must also test the controls to confirm the equipment won't operate. Once finished, return the controls to the neutral or off position. If repairs are not completed at the change of shift, remove your lock only after the employee relieving you has placed their lock on the hasp. Conveyor belts. Another potential cause of injury on asphalt plants is conveyor belts. Employees must follow the lockout, tagout, tryout procedure before cleaning, scraping, or performing maintenance on a conveyor pulley. Injuries and fatalities have occurred when the tool being used to clean a roller got caught and pulled the employee into a pinch point. Guards and other protective devices are in place to restrict and prevent access to potentially dangerous areas of the conveyor. Be sure to replace these guards and protective devices after performing maintenance. Do not ride, step, or sit on a conveyor belt at any time. Machinery. When working on an asphalt plant, employees must always be aware of the mobile equipment moving around them. Remember, mobile equipment operators have large blind spots and may not be able to see you. Because of this, all mobile equipment at an asphalt plant has the right of way. Employees should take the following precautions when working near mobile equipment. Do not cross directly in front of or immediately behind heavy equipment or trucks. Always approach mobile equipment from the operator's side where visibility is best. Exercise caution and always make eye contact with the operator before approaching the equipment. Equipment operators must lower their bucket and set the brake before allowing employees to approach the equipment. Also note that all mobile equipment is equipped with audible backup alarms. It is important to make sure that these safety devices are working properly. Each asphalt plant has a unique traffic flow, so be sure to familiarize yourself with your site's traffic pattern. Hydrated lime. Hydrated lime may also be added to hot asphalt mixes. Lime is corrosive to unprotected skin, so check your safety data sheets or SDS for potential hazards and PPE requirements. When lime is unloaded from a tanker into the silo, it is very important to always wear goggles. It is also important to remember that water activates lime. The only way to deactivate lime is through vinegar. In the event of lime exposure, vinegar should be applied to the affected area. Fires. Asphalt products are often stored and handled at high temperatures, so fire prevention and safety practices are extremely important. The fire hazards associated with asphalt plants actually come from the vapors of the asphalt and not the asphalt itself. Best practices to mitigate the risks of these hazards include maintaining order and cleanliness around the plant, careful inspections of equipment, and thorough training. All employees must know where the emergency gas shutoff or burner fuel shutoffs are located. Type ABC fire extinguishers should be strategically located throughout an asphalt plant and checked monthly to ensure they are ready for use. All employees must be trained on how to use a fire extinguisher. It is important to invite the local fire department to visit the asphalt plant to educate firefighters on potential hazards and ways to fight these types of fires safely. If there is an incident in which the fire department is needed, company personnel should always take charge to ensure that firefighters know the safest approach to fight the fire. Hot oil heaters are another fire hazard in the plant, which is why they are located away from other combustible materials and sometimes housed in a fireproof building. In the event that an employee needs to be on top of the silo to perform maintenance or clear a plugged slat conveyor, it is critical that he or she does not use diesel fuel and a torch to break the asphalt loose. The vapor from this process can cause an explosion or ignite a fire in the silo, potentially trapping the employee with no escape. Sources of ignition such as sparks, open flames, or lighted cigarettes are prohibited or strictly controlled in the area of asphalt operations. Remember, employee safety is most important. In the event of a fire or explosion, employees must leave the facility immediately. Falls. To reduce the risk of falling, there are several precautions that should be taken when working from elevated positions. When possible, work should be performed behind sturdy handrails that meet OSHA height and strength standards to prevent a worker from falling. If an employee must work higher than 4 feet above ground and standard handrails are unavailable, he or she must wear a full body harness with a secured lanyard. Be sure to inspect the harness prior to use. When a person falls, there is extreme force exerted on the body. A body harness distributes that force to the biggest bone in the body, the subpelvic area. The D-ring on the back of the harness is used to attach a lanyard or other fall protection device to a stable location on the elevated surface. It is important to use correctly placed tie-off points to prevent falling. For those working in a man lift, a harness and lanyard must be worn at all times. The lanyard must be attached to the manufacturer's anchor point within the operator's basket. Loading asphalt. An additional safety risk on an asphalt plant is under the asphalt silos. When loading the asphalt mix, truck drivers must always stay in their cab with windows rolled up to prevent accidentally coming in contact with hot asphalt. It is very important that drivers stay alert and remain off their CB radios and cell phones. Conclusion. Working around an asphalt plant can be dangerous, but there are many things that can be done to properly manage safety risks. To briefly summarize this awareness presentation, all employees should understand how to maintain, operate, and work around all areas and pieces of equipment on the plant. Employees must also be trained and always follow proper procedures regarding PPE, lockout, tagout, tryout, confined spaces, asphalt burns, hydrated lime, fire safety, and fall protection. These procedures are in place for your safety. Please follow all steps carefully to create the safest work environment possible. The topics, issues, procedures, and processes demonstrated in this video are those that we believe will be helpful in managing and mitigating risks on asphalt plants. Every plant is unique, and this presentation should not be a substitute for the specific safety training at your site or the advice and direction of your safety officer.